Whoever said that Australian trees don't grow upside down? It's a baobab, or, as the legitimate locals call it, a boab tree, and it's been adapted through evolution to live in some of the hottest and driest places in the world. Its massive trunk stores an enormous amount of water, and its stubby root-like branches burst into leaf and flower whenever the conditions are right, and that's usually after rain. Now this venerable tree, which may be as much as 3,000 years old, was used as a prison when the area was first settled, and as such it epitomises the story I'm about to tell. The story of evolution imprisoned on an island continent. You see, the baobabs were conspicuous members of the flora of Africa, Madagascar, and a small section of the northern coast of Australia. Ample proof that those far-flung bits of the world were at one time joined together as a supercontinent called Gondwanaland. It was during the main phase of breakup of the giant continent that the mammals, birds and flowering plants, three of the main groups of land-dwelling organisms, began to evolve. Over a period of some 200 million years, the world as we know it came into existence, each new continent getting a share of the plants and animals on offer. And that, we believe, is how Australia moved into isolation and got its baobab trees. But the baobabs weren't the only gifts from Gondwanaland. The descendants of many other plants and animals which had lived on the giant continent now became isolated on the new island, while others who could make the perilous crossing became the first immigrants. Every evening on the coast near Melbourne, these tiny penguins, sometimes in their thousands, make their way back from feeding grounds far out to sea. They come to claim their squatters' rights, as they have probably ever since penguins first evolved. The only difference is that today they're a great tourist attraction, and they have to run the gauntlet of oohs and ahs in broad Australia.
There are one or two regulations which you must observe.
They come to rest, to nest and to raise the next generation of fairy penguins that will grace these southern waters. Like their flying cousins, the sea is no barrier to these birds, and all they really need when on dry land is some measure of protection from predators and admirers.
And flashlight photography in the reserve is definitely prohibited.
Other animals were not so lucky. They couldn't cross the ocean barriers, and once isolated on the Australian landmass, had to stay put and make the most of whatever came their way. There he comes, one spiny anteater, and I'm not being cruel, it's the only way you can really pick 'em up. Echidna, one of the only two monotremes left in the world. Now, the monotremes are mammals. Look, you can see the hair, and they lay eggs, which makes them really primitive as far as the mammals go. Echidna appears to play two roles, fills two niches. Inside that long snout is a long tongue, ideal for eating ants, and that's just what he does, although the ants are white and they're called termites. And also those wonderful long quills, so he plays the role as a hedgehog or the porcupine, and those are two roles which are played by other, much more advanced groups of mammals in other parts of the world. Thus, the Australian scene is something very special, both a living museum and a workshop of evolution. And what could be more Australian than a billabong bung full of kangaroos? Another one of the gifts from Gondwana land that has lasted right up to the present day. Excuse me for being a tourist for a moment, won't you? But they are such super animals. Now, we all know that the most famous group of animals that got isolated here in Australia were, of course, the marsupials. And we all know that the kangaroos are marsupials, aren't they? Fantastic. But let's remind ourselves exactly what the difference is between the marsupials and us, the placenta mammals. Now, we share with them the fact they're covered in hair, warm-bloodedness, and of course they feed their babies with milk. But remember, in the marsupials, the babies are born at a very, very early stage of development. Then in they go to the pouch, and they're fed there for a long, long time. And that could have been a real problem for Mum and Joey, because they'd fall easy prey to any meat eater that came along. But here on Australia, they were isolated from the bulk of the higher mammals, and that included most of the nasty carnivores. So it was that the monotremes and marsupials lived in glorious isolation, safe within their island prison, but stuck, if you think about it, with nowhere to go up the proverbial gum tree, which here forms the food plant for the most cuddly of all the pouch-bearing animals, the koala bear. Now, the koala bear must be regarded as one of the most fastidious grazers in the world, for it only makes use of some 15 of the 600 different sorts of eucalyptus which adorn the face of Australia. Now, isolation in a prison may appear a bad thing, but when the prison is as large and as diverse as Australia, just think of all the opportunities on offer. And this diversity in part accounts for the many different sorts of gum trees, all of which are endemic to Australia. The genus Eucalyptus, part of the myrtle family. Now, endemic means that they only naturally grow in this region of the world, flourishing across the landscapes, except in the harshest environments. And the top of Mount Kosciuszko, highest spot in Australia, is just too harsh. But there, not far away, that blue haze is oil of eucalyptus, and oh, it really does your tubes a power of good. It's been distilled off by the hot sun from the mighty gum forests which clothe the flanks of these mighty mountains. It doesn't look very harsh on a summer's day, but when winter comes, the environment is as alpine as any European man or plant could want. taught me to yodel, yodel-o-dee, yodel-o-dee, yodel-o-dee. Ho-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee, ho-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee, ho-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee-lo-dee. The snows of winter bring out the skiers in their thousands to enjoy the rigours of the mountain slopes, while the pulse of spring bring out the flowers in their millions. Hardy plants like the Australian edelweiss, growing closely pressed to the ground, protected by the snow from the bitter weather and the passing skis. But they are there, the mountain plants of Australia, ready to beautify this very special piece of environment, proving that another alpine spring has sprung. Alpine doesn't simply mean growing in the mountains of Central Europe. It describes an environment which is found wherever mountains raise their heads up above the tree line. There, betwixt the forest and the eternal snows, is always a hem of beauty, with plants as alpine as a cuckoo clock on a summer's day. Hard as it is to tear myself away from all these alpine plants, I came to look at the gums, and to do that I must head downhill towards that first fringe of forest. The first of the eucalypts, and even though it's a snow gum which is adapted to the rigours of high alpine life, up here on the tree line, even this isn't doing too well. In fact, it's all gnarled and torn about by the wind, and this one's almost laying flat on the ground. But at least at this point, they're low enough to allow me to easily reach up to the flowers and demonstrate some of their beautiful secrets, the secrets of this very, very fantastic group of plants. Now, the word eucalyptus means well covered. Well, calyptra, covered, and it refers to the flower bud. Now there's one of them, and you see covering over the top is a nice hard little wooden hat. If I can get the cap off very gently, yeah, there it comes, and it reveals the other